So if you want to take your seats. So thank you everyone for coming out. My name is Eduardo Schonborn. I'm the planning manager here in the city of El Segundo. So kind of overseeing the project at a high level. Again, thank you for showing up, taking your Wednesday evening to be here. This is the first of several public meetings that the city is actually hosting and will take place about this project. I know that there's been some past meetings that were hosted by the applicant. Again, those are completely separate from the city. The city has no, or not knowledge, but we, have no oversight onto that. So just kind of letting you know, I know that my director and myself have attended some of those meetings in the past. Again, we've been just like you guys, kind of, as observers. And so I just want to make that distinction. So this is the first of several meetings that will take place by the city. So anyhow, so we're here to obtain comments regarding the environmental issues that should be discussed in the forthcoming draft EIR that will be prepared for this project. We're not talking about the merits of the project tonight. Right now, we got to the point where there's an initial study that was completed, and so we're here to take some comments regarding those environmental issues that should be discussed in that draft EIR. So I do have with me a couple folks that I'd like to introduce. So with me tonight I have David Blumenthal. He's assisting the city as a project manager. Also here tonight is Mike Harden. He's a representative from ESA. ESA is our environmental consultant that's preparing the environmental documents for this project. I just want to let you know that these two gentlemen here and their respective firms, they are hired by the city and they report to the city directly. They do not report to the applicant, although they will have conversations with the applicant for questions and clarifications. But I also want to let you know that these two gentlemen here and their respective firms, they work for the city and answer to us. So, yes, sir. David Blumenthal. He's right here. He'll be up in a second. Mike Harden. Yes, of course. Feel free to interrupt. I know you will. I like to pull his leg, and it's good to see a lot of folks here. I mean, I know that we've. I've probably seen you and you've seen me over the past couple of years. You guys will come to the counter and just inquire. So again, I appreciate you guys taking the time tonight. So David, I'm gonna go ahead and hand it over to David in a second, but he'll introduce the project. He'll describe the details of the proposed development that was submitted to us by the applicant and what will be analyzed and considered by the Planning Commission and City Council at future meetings that are specifically designed to consider the merits of the project and ultimately act upon the project. So before I turn this over, I'm just letting you know that the project plans and information on this project and the initial study prepared thus far are available on the city's website. It can be found by going onto our website. You can also, with your mobile phone or smartphone, go ahead and go directly to the website using the QR code that will take you to that page. As new information becomes available, we'll provide it there. There are copies of this presentation at the back, but again, it's also available on the city's website. Again, there's a pending projects page, and that will again take you to the Grand Kansas North and the associated information that's available there. So with that, I will go ahead and hand it over to David.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here tonight with you, and I'm glad we have a good turnout because a lot of times we come to these projects, no one shows up, so it's kind of good that the community's interested and wants to get their voice heard. So as Ed said, the QR code above you there on the screens there will take you to the pending projects page on the city's website. That code you'll see on every one of the slides tonight, so if you don't get a chance to scan it now, feel free to scan it at any point during the presentation, and it will stay there. So The project, as many of you are aware, is for proposed residential development. It's at the corner of Kansas and Washington. The property itself was formerly an industrial use. It's bounded by Holly Avenue to the north, Grand Avenue to the south, and then Kansas Street and Washington Street. It's about 3.67 acres. Currently, it's in the Smoky Hollow East zone. That current zone does allow industrial type uses like which were there, or warehousing style uses. There are some provisions for some restaurant uses also in that zone. So under today's current zoning, those are the kind of uses that will, could be built there. Now, the applicant is proposing a 323 unit apartment building. And as we present tonight, there always is the potential that this could shrink down later on in the process, but the current application pending is 323 units. We are currently reviewing the most recent submittal to the city. It will the applicant will be receiving a comment letter from us within the next week, giving them additional items they do need to submit to the city, and we do that kind of process as we go through the environmental process as well too. Now, their specific applications do involve a general plan amendment. It will be to remove it from the Smoky Hollow specific plan and adopt a new Grand Kansas specific plan, construct the 323 apartments and 450 parking spaces, and then the environmental impact report. There are some additional smaller requests that are tied to this, including a tentative track map, which will just re-subdivide the property. And then there also is a request to vacate a small portion of Washington Street, which is currently an easement to the city. And then that will become private property between them and the properties on the east side of Washington Street. This is the current proposal. And you can see how this would look, the property would look from Kansas and Grand. Now, there are 7 stories right now, although because of the way that the property slopes down from the south to the north, it's, when you look at it from the street, there's no specific part that looks like it's 7 stories, but overall it is 7 stories. It does have a height of about 72 feet, but again, because of the way that the property slopes, the tallest it's going to look from any particular spot will be about 46 feet. And looking at it from Washington and Holly, you see on Washington, that's going to be the access to the proposed parking structure. It is 6 levels, 1 story below and the rest above ground. And it does contain the 5 the 450 parking spaces. And this here is just an appearance from the Grand in Kansas. This is just the rendering currently. And a rendering from Holly in Kansas. Now, you do see what on the bottom floor there, what does appear to be like some commercial space, but that's actually one of the community rooms that is proposed in the project. Now, the community rooms are meant to be for amenities, they're amenities for the residents there. There are also 2 outdoor courtyards being proposed, and there are 3 roof decks totaling about 9,000 square feet between the 2 the roof decks and the courtyards. The courtyards will be where all the outdoor space for the residents will be. Each of the units do, most of the units have their own private balcony as well too. So we're gonna go ahead and switch it over to Mike, and he's gonna talk to you a little bit about the CEQA process, and I'll come back up and we'll talk about how you can provide comments to us on this tonight.
When can we ask questions of you?
We're gonna have Mike go ahead and do his part, then I'm gonna come back up and tell you about that.
Why are you doing this to tell us about it? Because when I put together with my group 18 homes across the street, we never talked to the people in the neighborhood because we went right to the city approved it. But with something like this, it's almost as if you're trying to spoonful this into each person and each group so that maybe we will accept it much kinder and gentler if we are slowly given little bites at a time, because the more people that know about this, the less it looks like we want to have it done.
So this meeting is a statutory requirement for the environmental document on this. As smaller project, like 18 units, may not be going through a full-blown environmental impact report, so may not have required a meeting like this.
Oh, so you required a
Yes,
lot.
yeah, Mike's gonna talk a little bit about that.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is, my portion is the sequel portion of the presentation. And again, my name is Mike Harden. I'm with ESA, and we are the environmental planning firm that's working with the city to prepare the environmental impact report for the project. So let's get started. So the city of and I'm going to be a little bit repetitive of what some of Eduardo said, just so we're all understanding of the meeting tonight and the CEQA requirements that are applicable to the project. So the city of El Segundo is the lead agency under CEQA and is holding this EIR scoping meeting to comply with the requirements of CEQA. The objectives of this portion of the scoping meeting are to provide information about the EIR process, to identify the environmental topics to be analyzed in the EIR, and to solicit input on specific environmental issues and concerns from you, the community, that you would like to see addressed in the EIR. And as we will discuss later on, this scoping meeting is for community input on what you would like to see, and as Eduardo mentioned, we are at the beginning of the environmental review process. And no decision on the project will be made tonight. The EIR will address the project that is being proposed by the applicant. Let's go to the next slide. So let's talk a little bit about the purpose. Again, the purpose of CEQA review is to inform the decision makers and the public of the project's potential environmental impacts. The purpose is also to increase the public's understanding and participation in the environmental review process. The EIR will be an informational document that will disclose the potential impacts of the project on the environment and identify ways to avoid or reduce significant environmental impacts through mitigation measures or alternatives to the project. Okay, so this slide presents an overview of the EIR process that is required by CEQA for the city. And as you can see, there will be various opportunities for public input throughout the EIR process. Again, we are at the beginning of the EIR process, which began with the city distributing the Notice of Preparation, or NOP, indicating their intent to prepare an EIR. The distribution of the NOP initiated a 30-day public review period to solicit comments on the content of the EIR in accordance with CEQA requirements. The NOP circulation period began on February 6th, 2025. Thank you. Give him just a sec. Again, the NOP circulation period, thank you. It began on February 6th, and comments on the content of the EIR will be accepted by the city through March 7th, 2025. So this scoping meeting is part of that public process. And the intent, again, the intent of this scoping period is to solicit comments from the public, from agencies and stakeholders regarding the environmental issues that they would like to see addressed in the EIR. All comments received during the comment period will be reviewed by the city and considered as the EIR is being prepared. Following the public review period, the technical analyses for the EIR will be carried out. And I'll talk about those topics in the next slides. Following completion of the draft EIR, a notice of availability of the draft EIR will be sent out to the public, and the EIR document will be circulated for public review for at least 45 days. And at the close of the public review draft EIR period, the city will review all public comments received, and as required by CEQA, will provide responses to environmental comments raised on the draft EIR as part of a final EIR. Okay. So this slide is a list of the environmental topics that were found to have a less than significant impact based on an initial study completed by the city that is currently available on the city's website. These topics will not be further evaluated in the EIR. So these topics include agricultural and forestry resources, biological resources, mineral resources, and wildfire. So these issues basically have been fully analyzed as part of the initial study document that's currently available. Okay, so now this is a list of the environmental topics that will be addressed and analyzed in the EIR based on the initial study. And these include aesthetics, air quality, cultural resources, energy, geology and soils, greenhouse gas emissions, hazards and hazardous materials, hydrology and water quality, land use and planning, noise, population and housing, public services, recreation, transportation, tribal cultural resources, and utilities and service systems. So you can see it's a very comprehensive list of issues that are going to be analyzed in the EIR. So for each of these topics to be addressed in the EIR, temporary construction-related impacts, long-term operational impacts, and cumulative impacts will be evaluated. Where significant impacts are identified, mitigation measures will be provided to the extent feasible in an effort to reduce impacts to less than significant levels. The EIR will also evaluate alternatives to the project to explore opportunities to reduce or avoid the project's significant impacts. And the EIR will include several focused technical studies for these specific areas, including air quality, cultural resources, noise, and transportation or traffic. The EIR will also provide qualitative analyses for topics such as aesthetics, land use, and tribal cultural resources. So, through this scoping period, we would like to understand any comments related to these particular issue areas to ensure that the EIR considers all applicable information. In addition, we also welcome your comments on any alternatives that you might like to see addressed in the EIR. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to David, but again, thank you all for coming, and we look forward to receiving your comments so we can consider them as the EIR is being prepared.
Yeah, you could ask as you come up. You could definitely ask for clarifying questions, and we'll try to answer them. If not, the applicant is here. We may defer you to him after the meeting because we're understanding they will be out in the courtyard after the meeting, being able to answer any questions for you. But we'll try to do our best tonight to answer. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Let me do this real quick, and then we'll go through it all. Yeah, absolutely. So we forgot to mention in the beginning of this, tonight's meeting is being recorded. So you do get a chance to come up tonight to verbal. There are different ways you can provide comments. Okay. This meeting is intended for us to listen to you. We wanted to present the project and the overall process for you. We want to hear your concerns based on that last two slides of the potential environmental impacts that this project could cause to you as a community. Ways we can do that, you can obviously do verbal tonight. We'll open it up in a bit. We do have these comment cards in the back. You can fill one of these out and just give it to us if you don't feel like speaking in public. You can email Ed directly. His email address is up on the screens. We're asking it to email to Ed, so it's on the city servers. Even though I'm the project manager, I'm a consultant, so we want to make sure it's on the city servers so it's public record. And then you can mail a letter to Ed or drop it off here at the planning counter during normal operating hours. We are accepting all comments until March 7th. Once that happens, Mike's team will go back, take all those comments, and they start their official analysis on the environmental issues and considering all those. And then we release the response to comments with the environmental impact report as well, right?
It's part of the final EIR.
Yeah, so response to comments will be part of that final EIR that does come out. And
We have 9 days today till the 7th to respond to this particular presentation? Is that what you're saying?
In addition to the 3 weeks we've already had, yes. So, because, yeah, it was mailed out to everybody before. So tonight's just the. Yes, yes.
This doesn't tell us half of what you just showed us here. So how can you comment on this? How can you comment on this, since this is so much more detailed? That's just my question.
Yeah, there's more project details in that letter than what I presented tonight, but absolutely, if we can get the comments in by March 7th. And again, we'll open up right now to questions, and then if you have a verbal comment, we had 2 people did fill out kind of for wanting to speak, even though these aren't speaker requests, everybody has an option, no one has to request it. We'll go through the room, but we'll start with Jermaine Soria. We'll go to you. Yeah.
Hello. My name is German Soria. I'm not from El Segundo specifically, but I am a neighbor. I live right here off of Imperial and Inglewood. I grew up in this area, going to the beach here. Top Golf is here now, so we spend time there, get to take the kids there. We talked about temporary traffic with construction. Something that we like to emphasize is with apprenticeship and local hire, we can reduce traffic with construction. We know that it's a lot of noise, a lot of stuff. We're driving big trucks every day. If they live in the area, it minimizes it. They don't have to bring that big old truck to work. They could take a bike. There's ways to minimize air quality, right? Also, what this does, it helps us build our community, come back, reinvest. And that's what we're here for. Thank you.
And then Ray Lawson.
Good evening, everyone. Once again, I too work and recreate in the general area of El Segundo. We have many of our members that live in El Segundo, as far as with the Carpenters Union, and we feel like we'll be impacted by this project environmentally because as we work, we know a lot of construction projects. They work at the high school, doing renovations at the high school and so forth. And a lot of times, the workers that they're using, that they're bringing in, the contractors, they don't even live in LA County. They're coming from San Bernardino, Riverside, Antelope Valley, and that adds to the traffic pollution and so forth. When you have workers right here in this area, in the South Bay, that could be on this project. We just ask that that be considered at this scope meeting, to be added in, that they use construction workers, they use people, local hire people that can do the work right here in this area, and it will cut down on pollution, it'll cut down on noise, and it helped the economy. It'll help the local economy because people, when they work here, they buy lunch, they spend here, and so forth. So we just ask that be considered in the environmental impact part of the project. Thank you, Mike.
I think so we'll just open up if you want to raise your hands if you want to speak. I know the one lady had a question on first, and then we'll get to everybody. We will get to everybody tonight.
So I get to talk.
Yes.
Cheryl, would you like to stand so
Is there anybody here who does not know me? Okay, there you go.
viewing audience may not know you.
I was on TV last night. Hi, my name's Cheryl. I just had a couple questions with regards to the slides. If you could go back to the beginning of Mike's presentation, please. So, okay, go ahead one more, forward.
Oh, one more forward.
Yeah, sorry about that.
You can see my animations again.
Ooh, ah. Okay, so on this one, it said that he wanted to inform the decision makers. It was not stated who those decision makers are.
So ultimately, the planning commission and city council will have to make decisions whether or not to approve this project.
Okay, thank you. And then you said that all comments are reviewed by the city. I believe that was in the next one. What is the criteria
for review.
Yeah, you said all of our comments that we're gonna give you tonight and until March 7th are reviewed by the city. I assume that's the planning commission and the city council. But what's the criteria? Oh my gosh, Cheryl's, a whack job. I mean, she doesn't even know what she's talking about, looking for bad soil or whatever, or the clean air. So we're gonna throw that one out.
Yeah.
What's the criteria?
So there are specific thresholds of significance that are defined to whether or not a project has an impact. Any comment related to the EIR will be responded to and be reviewed by Mike's team, myself, and Ed's and city staff before it goes to any planning commission or city council. Those also become part of the public record and will be out before the public hearings as well too. So you, during the public hearings, if you provide a comment and you think we're completely off based on our response, we'll have a time to address the commission and council.
And also, what I'd like to just emphasize is try to keep your comments pertinent, at least at this point, pertinent to the issues of the environmental impacts. Obviously, as you saw on Mike's slide, they're both kind of both natural and built environment topical areas. So for purposes of this commenting, definitely try to keep your comments directed towards these topical areas. And if you think that something needs to be studied further, definitely indicate that. Whatever your with regards to that. So because I mean, if you go off on a tangent on something that's irrelevant or not associated with the environmental topics, we're just going to say, okay, thank you, so noted, but there's nothing for us to respond to because you're not staying on topic. So I just want to, at least you will have an opportunity later to talk about the actual merits of it and why it shouldn't be approved globally. But right now, let's focus on the environmental, and that's what this whole process right now is for. We're beginning that environmental process.
Can I just clarify, just to follow up with David, so for tonight's meeting, the comments that you're providing, and as we've said, we're looking to hear your comments about the environmental issues of the project. That's my job, is we're helping the city with the EIR. So your comments, we and the city will review them, and as they're applicable to the environmental impact analysis, we'll address them in the EIR. The EIR, we have not prepared the EIR yet. It's still down the line. We're at the very start here. So we want to, so if you've got some concerns about any of these topics in particular, that's what we're interested in now. We're not going to, your comments that you're going to provide tonight, we're not going to have formal written responses to the comments provided tonight. However, after we prepare the EIR, when you guys are able to review, thank you. After the EIR is prepared, and then you review it, you will submit, again, another opportunity to comment. You'll be able to comment specifically on the analysis that's included in the EIR. Those will be written comments. They'll be submitted to the city. At that point in time, those written comments to the city, we will then provide you a written response to your comments on the draft EIR. Those written responses will be included as part of a final EIR. So you got the draft EIR, you'll review it, you'll comment. We will then provide responses to comments. Those will be formally responded to in writing, and you'll be able to review that, again, as part of the final EIR. So when we say the EIR is going to inform the decision makers, it consists of several pieces. It's the initial study, which is out for review now. It's the draft EIR, which is forthcoming, and then it'll be the final EIR, which follows. The final EIR is different in that the responses to the comments from the draft EIR will be included, and it also, if there's any updates or corrections or changes that we make to the draft, those are also included in the final EIR. So I just want to be clear on kind of what expectations are as far as what you'll be seeing in regards to your responses to your comments. Correct. So that one, once it's prepared, and it's still a ways off, it's gonna be months, but that one, the draft EIR will be released for a minimum of 45 days.
And you said it'd be released to who?
The same, the city's mailing, it'll be,
We'll send a notice out to everyone like we did now, and it'll have the links to the project. It'll be on the website and available for public review.
On that note,
Can,
how far are you mailing these letters to? I mean, is it the 500-foot perimeter around the project? Or, because that was an issue when this project first started. His neighbors across the street did not even know that the project was going to take place because they only mailed it within 100 feet from the project. So where are they mailing the letters to? How far out are they mailing the letters? But that's not my one question. I wanted to ask a question about the CI.
Before you do, let me just add one more tidbit there. When we speak, we'll get you the mic to speak so we have this better recorded. For purposes of just getting things on the record, if you can give me, before you ask, your first name, last initial, just so we have a track of who's asking what, please. So,
So the question was, with respect to, how far do we mail notices? What's the radius? And the answer to that.
so typically, the city does 300 feet. We've increased it to 500 for this project, as well as resident, occupants up to 150 feet within the project. So property owners within 500, occupants within 150.
And then that's also,
Well,
well, we also published a notice in the El Segundo Herald as well, so it does get circulated to everyone. That's what we're here for. Yes, you're right, and that's what we're here for.
This is bullshit. They're only gonna do it for a minimum amount. You're trying to sit there and snowball this thing in the door.
Well, I'm sorry to feel that way, but I mean, we're trying to be as transparent as possible. I mean, and as indicated, we normally have a 300-foot radius for this particular project. We expanded that out to 500 feet. Again, we also published that in the newspaper. The notice and all the information is also contained on our city's website with the notices, the initial study, project plans.
Ed, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Could you explain how that property site mysteriously initially was not even permitted to build residential on that site, period, because of the contamination? How can that all of a sudden be bypassed and ignored and all of a sudden turn into a housing development? And then after the initial testing by the Department of Toxics, they still indicated abundant PCEs, TCEs, and Freon on that property, even now that they want to build on it. And it's in a public report on the EVR report that was published on December 30th. How can they still want to build with that soil being so contaminated, so terribly toxic that it's impacting the entire community and not just the residents? I'm the homeowner association president for our Ellen Point project, and they are also very concerned about the toxicity level of all the soil in that whole area. And now it's impacting with the 18 families that we have, the 30 children living on our complex, and it's completely still being ignored with, here's the report again, Department of High Level. I mean, you guys have seen these PCEs, TCs. Who approved or how did they mysteriously subvert and all of a sudden authorize building when that was one of the issues that they couldn't build when they invested in that $50 million piece of land over there?
so
How can all of a sudden that be ignored, and now we're gonna approve it for building 300 and some plus units on a, what do you call it, 6 acres of land or 3 acres of land?
3.6.
Yeah, 3.6, that's impossible. And you're gonna shove it down the community's throat? And as this gentleman said, why is this only being brought up to the 300 or 400 people around our community? That's what's terrible. Why would we accept the liability of a city to say, authorize, okay, go ahead and build on that toxic dump site? Why would they do that? Why, our politicians are smart enough. You are consultants. You're here to represent and listen to us, the people. Why is that being ignored? Who is paying who's getting paid off to authorize some type of illegal transactions to all of a sudden make it residential? And again, that's all I have to say right now.
So
Yeah,
from what
well, let me respond to that, actually, let me respond to that. So I do want to be clear, no decisions on approving this project have been made. This is a public information gathering session.
Have you
Now, as far
reviewed
as,
the
hold on, let me
report?
finish,
I
let
know,
me
but
finish.
have you reviewed the report?
Yes, I have, actually, let me
Does
finish.
that concern you?
Let me finish, please. I can go back and forth with you, we'll be here all night, or we can try to give everybody time, so. DTSC has an open case on this site right now. No project would be built until DTSC approves that the site has been cleaned. So one of the provisions that, if the city decides to approve the project, and that's an if the city decides to approve the project, one of the provisions will be that they obtain full clearance for residential uses on the site from DTSC, which means that they would have to go through whatever soil cleaning that they would need to get that kind of approval for that. The DTSC case on the site, that's not a city response, the city's not involved in that. We know it's open, we know that it's being processed, but ultimately it's going to take DTSC to sign off on residential uses on this property.
I spoke to the director from that Chatsworth office. He indicated it's going to take over a year and a half just to clear that entire dump site in the first place.
Okay.
And all the leakage and all the chemicals are now heading westbound into the different residential community of the two complexes that live on that corner across the street. That particular development promised that they would come and wash our cars, they would clean our houses and clean the windows, completely ignored. Then they demolished the whole thing because it became a nest of infestation with criminals coming in every day into the city of El Segundo, pilfering every piece of wire, copper that they could steal. Finally, the city authorized a demo of that site.
That's correct. Yes. You wanna, we're up here, then the gentleman behind
Thank you,
you's
Victor.
getting anxious.
We're moving on. Anyway, I'm Kathy Stabile. I'm a 43-year resident of El Segundo, and I live right behind where this place is going to be built. I think I would be, how do they evaluate? I'd like to understand noise as one of their evaluation topics. What's the process they do to evaluate noise? Because like right now, we're a residential neighborhood. There's not a whole lot of traffic. So are you going to compare it to what it is now, to what they think it's going to be? Or can you explain how they're going to come up with each of those evaluations? You know, what's the process?
And I'm going to answer your question, but let me just quickly answer on the contamination issue. We haven't done the EIR yet. So we haven't done the hazardous materials analysis. There will be a full report that, and I appreciate your comments because this is the type of stuff we need to hear. We need to hear the issues that are concerning to you, the reports that are available. We take all these comments, we listen, we make sure that our hazardous materials section of the EIR addresses those issues that you're raising. So we don't have, I mean, I can't tell you what the answer is right now because we haven't done the analysis yet. It's still forthcoming.
I know, but you understand how can soil that was contaminated and the covenant was placed on the property in the first place, that they couldn't build residential even on that property because of its toxicity level,
So
the poisonous. How could that get bypassed
That's what our
and ignored?
analysis is going to do. We are going to determine whether or not, what will be the impacts to the environment and to the public as a result of this development. So we will look at the potential contamination that is there. And if there is contamination that exceeds applicable thresholds, we will identify mitigation measures as we can, to the extent feasible, to clean it up. But I can tell you residential properties don't get built unless they're cleaned up to an acceptable standard. So the analysis that we'll be preparing will include mitigation measures to address the soil conditions that are out there now. But we have not done the analysis yet. So that'll be included, and you'll be able to review it and see, okay, you know, here's what we've got. And it'll be a very detailed analysis of the hazardous materials issues. Real quick, I'm gonna go back to her noise question. So the noise, with regards to noise, so. Yeah, I can talk about, they're all different. But let me maybe talk about noise first. So the city has noise standards. So it's a certain decibel increase that you're allowed to do for any sort of construction activities. So as I mentioned previously, our analysis, and for other issues too, we analyze construction impacts, that's one subsection, and then we have operation. So we will look at all of the construction activities. So we gather and collect all the construction equipment, all the phasing. We have acoustical noise experts that do very sophisticated noise modeling. They put all the equipment, everything that's gonna be used, they put it together. It spits out a model of how much noise, the worst case noise that the project's construction activities will generate. We then compare those to the city's noise thresholds. If we go over, if the noise levels go over, that's when we need to identify mitigation measures. So we're gonna say, hey, you guys are gonna have to only operate these certain pieces of equipment at certain times, or maybe there's just limitations on sort of the construction equipment to get them below whatever the construction thresholds are. That's the goal. That's the goal of our environmental analysis. Now, sometimes we have seen, and it happens for environmental impacts all the time, where you have impacts where you just can't get them below that threshold level. Let's just say, and I'm just making up numbers, say you got a noise threshold of 5 decibels. The construction is going to be 8 decibels. We've done everything we can. We've analyzed the project as it's being proposed. What the EIR will do is say, hey, look, we've analyzed, we've come up with a host of mitigation measures. We're still above the noise thresholds. So we would identify that as a significant impact. So that's the job of the EIR, is to identify and disclose what are the impacts. Sometimes you have an impact that's significant and it's unavoidable, as in the case of construction noise. That's what it's a disclosure document. So the decision makers will consider all, and this goes for any issue area. What are our impacts, what are our mitigation measures, and what are those issues that are significant and unavoidable?
So you don't make recommendations for approval?
No, that's not, I don't do that. That's the Planning Commission and the City Council's job. My job is just to inform them of what the environmental impacts are. That's our purpose under CEQA. So you had mentioned operation for noise too. So we are going to evaluate what are the noise levels when operation, project's built. You mentioned the traffic. We are going to have operational traffic noise models where we will compare the future traffic conditions with the project compared to what the traffic noise is now. So you're going to have a noise level that's existing. It's probably going to go a tick up once we have the project's traffic. We're going to tell you what that increase is going to be. There's going to be a threshold that it would exceed that would cause a significant impact. If it goes above that, we'll tell you. I mean, that's our job. Again, we're disclosing what the impacts are. So we'll do the operational traffic. We'll also look at the open space, if there's open space uses, the actual noise generated by the project itself. And so those noise impacts will also be disclosed on the neighboring uses as well. Does that help? Correct. So we will analyze that.
I mean, we already have problems with that. You see on the parent network that's over by the Rite Aid area on the building that has red staircases. And you hear about the people around that area complaining about the noise level of parties on the roof.
So that's something we'll analyze. We'll look at those outdoor spaces, and we will look at the maximum capacity of how many people they can get out there, and we will have an impact or we'll have a noise analysis of those rooftop areas, ground level spaces, and then it'll say what that noise level will be at those adjacent residential uses.
Can I ask one more question on that?
Sure.
Density, population density. I don't see that on there. I see population and housing, but right now it's single-family homes. So how do you compare single-family homes currently to a 323-unit apartment building with the number of people that will be living there? So how does that compare? How do you come up with an analysis of whether that's good or bad? I mean, what parameters do you use to evaluate that?
So the population and housing, so that section, what we'll do is we will look at the number of units, we'll look at how many people are going to live there with the residential, we'll have a calculation that shows what the residential unit count will be. So in terms of population and housing, if you haven't read many EIRs in your days, which I suspect maybe, nope, didn't think so. Pretty boring stuff most of the time. But so population, we look at whether or not the project would induce substantial population growth. And what that means is essentially based on, we'll look at the city's projections, what other regional agencies, such as the Southern California Association of Governments, what their projections are for the city and the area. So we'll compare the project's populations to those other applicable projections for the city and for the region. That's population. That's that section of the EIR. But as far as what you're saying is density, I think probably you're thinking of it in terms of everything else that comes along with this density that the project is proposing. And that's exactly what the EIR and all these other issue areas is analyzing: the noise, the traffic, the air quality. So all of our environmental issues are going to be analyzing the project at its proposed density.
Little paper you want us to sign and send in. Obviously, down the same thing, the 900 things over and over and over again. That doesn't change what you're looking for, right? That doesn't change what you are going to investigate, unless somebody pops up something bizarre that you hadn't thought of.
I like to think we're pretty good at doing what we do.
Right.
We've been doing this for a long time. You know, we know most of the environmental issues that are, would accompany a project like this. But it still is helpful because, like, for example, the gentleman back there is talking about the hazardous materials. I understand that that's a big, important concern.
But you should know that, right? You're going to know that,
yeah,
regardless.
I will know that, yes, because we're our team, and it's not me, it's a whole team of specialists in their respective issue areas, review all of the agency databases. We do extensive record searches to find out what possible contaminants are out there. We've got specialists in each of these issue areas, for traffic, for noise, for air quality. That's what these guys do day in and day out. It's very technical on some of these issues. So most of the time, yes, if you're going to say you're concerned about the traffic, we're already going to analyze the traffic. But it does happen where for certain issues, you might raise something that we're like, oh, shoot, we really need to maybe provide some more attention, some more detail on that. It's a big, important community concern. So we welcome. And it's better for us to hear these comments now, what your concerns are, because we want to address it in the EIR. It makes my job easier when we go to do the final EIR and I'm responding to comments if we've already addressed it, because then we'll have to address it in the final. So it is important that your concerns are raised, that we listen to them, and that we address them in the draft EIR. So I don't know if that helps, but.
Well, my thought was, if 10,000 people write in, we want to know about the traffic. It's going to be horrible. Just use that as an example, right? You're already doing that. What we write into you, 10,000 people writing little pieces of paper to you or on the website, is not going to change how you're going to go after that.
No, okay, well, we're already analyzing, I mean, we know
Correct.
what we're doing for
If somebody writes in, how much gum is gonna be on the sidewalk, you're probably not gonna analyze that,
Not a CEQA impact.
right? So, that was
So,
kind
but
of,
what-
that, no matter what writing in all the stuff is not the ones that are to us.
So remember, remember, this meeting is for the environmental impact report. When you guys are talking to the planning commission, to the city council, and you got 1,000 people saying you're concerned about traffic, that's the time.
But your report will either help us or hurt us.
Well, it's gonna disclose what the.
Correct.
I'm an objective, we're just here to tell the facts of what
Right.
what the
Right.
impacts are,
Right.
so.
And if I may too, I think one of the things too is, yes, they'll be talking about transportation or traffic, right? But if, for example, you said, you know what, there's a particular intersection that probably should be looked at more in detail that the consultant may not know about, and so it's critical for us for that to be conveyed, because then we can say, okay, consultant, go ahead and also
But
look at
doesn't
that
the city
particular
get
area.
involved at some point and go, okay, that's great, the traffic isn't gonna be impacted, but there needs to be a light at Hawley and PCH, there needs to be a light at, if they don't come up with that, doesn't the city step in and go, you guys need to look at this, because this,
Well, you know, I mean, we base our responses on what we know, and obviously, you guys are in the community. You guys know it a lot more than we do, and so it's really, our job to listen to that, because there's some things that we don't know, and sometimes we don't know what we don't know, right? So it's critical. This is a critical step, because you can at least convey some of those things. So yes, although transportation and traffic will be looked at, again, if there's like a particular intersection or a stretch of street that you guys think of, like, hey, you know what, could be an impact. I mean, we may not know about it, so, but it's good for us for you to convey that to us, so then that way they could do a deeper dive into that.
All you.
I have a two-part question. First one is, first part of it is, I don't know if anything comes out. Can you hear this?
Yes.
First part is, nothing against you guys at all, but I thought we were gonna be able to speak to the 5 to 10 people that make final decisions for the city. And do they hear or get anything from this? Is this being taped? Will they listen to this? Are they even do they even care? Do they get this? Do they know we're here? Because, like, I don't like coming to these things. I've gone to like 4 or 5 of these, and it kind of ruins the evening to have to come out of your life to come here and, like, nothing against you gentlemen, but to see people, and very rarely do you even find out who these people are that are going to make the decision, as I don't know who they are or what they're doing. I've gotten these names and everything, but do they hear us? Do they know what we're speaking about? Where are they?
Can I, let me respond to that.
That's the first
part.
question.
Yeah, let me respond to your first question
Okay.
first, and then I'll let you go on to your second one. The meeting is being recorded. It will be available. The decision makers are your planning commission and your city council. The commission and city council don't attend these meetings because they can't, because of the Brown Act, they can't like predetermine or pre-decide things. So they get the full report, and then they have to make their decisions off of that. They'll get the full environmental report, they'll get the full staff analysis of that, then during the
But they
public
don't get
hearings.
us, they don't have to listen to this, we don't know that, they don't have to stand in front of us and hear us. They supposedly get something recorded or notes sent to them where they,
For this, just on
Okay.
the environmental.
okay,
For the actual project.
okay,
There are public hearings.
got it.
You will all receive notice again. You'll be able to
Okay.
actually stand in front of them. And the public hearings go before the planning commission first. You know, the planning commission will sit up here on the dais, and they will listen to each and every one of you
Okay.
as well, too. The planning commission makes a recommendation to the council. And again, another public hearing, you get to come back and talk to the council again. And they, again, will make a decision on the project from that
Okay.
point.
Second part of the question. You gentlemen and your workers here, who pays you and who hired you guys?
So we're hired by the city, and we're paid by the city.
Okay.
But this is reimbursement? Yes, but the Applicant reimburses the cities for our cost.
So the
there's no
applicant's
cost.
really the person behind this paying you guys? Do you have any interaction with them while this is going on, or do you do you separately do it yourself? Because seeing these three guys here, this is almost like bringing the executioners to the people, us, that we're gonna be screwed by this apartment complex, and showing us the guys that are gonna be doing the killing. Okay, maybe I'm wrong, aren't I?
Yeah.
Hope I'm wrong.
Let me clarify. No, we're going to get to everybody tonight, I promise you. Okay. Let me just really quickly respond to that. So again, my firm and Mike's firm are paid for by the city. We answer only to the city. Now, in the normal course of processing any application, if I was a city staff member like Ed, you have normal communications with the applicant. We have to communicate about submittals. We have to communicate about questions they have. We have to communicate about making sure things are flowing back and forth to the city. And that's a normal course of action. So those communications do happen between myself and the city and Mike's team, I'm sorry, myself and the applicant, because I am functioning like I am a city employee.
Hi, thank you so much for allowing us to be here. I am Chelsea Motal, and I live at 1405 Ellen Point. Victor is the head of our HOA. Thanks, Victor, for your comment earlier. Before I get into my formal comment, I did want to make one note that when you are doing these studies, to not do it independent of the buildings that have been approved and are proposed for our area. This includes the one on PCH, as well as ones that are proposed for across Kansas and Grand, and plenty of others. So there is a huge almost housing proposal boom here. So when we're doing before and afters and projected, we just want to make sure all of those parts are considered because there will be a bigger impact independent of this project. Great. And thank you, David, Mike, and Eduardo. All right, so for those who don't know me, I am wife and mom of 2 small kids at Center Street School, and I sit before you tonight not just as a homeowner, but an active parent, an active community member, and an active steward of the legacy that is El Segundo to get housing right. We are here because a 7-story development, one that fundamentally disregards our city's existing codes, our neighborhood values, is being proposed next to 1- and 2-story residential houses. And make no mistake, and I will state this because I know this is about the environmental report, so I will get to that as well, but I want our statements as a community and as a neighborhood to be consistent in each and every meeting we get before consultants and the city. So I'll go through that, and it will be short as well. But I believe that despite Griffin and Greystar's documented time spent with residents over the last year plus, that their original intent is laid bare in the proposal that is before you and is before the city, which is one that prioritizes profitability over people. And that is something that has been said directly from the applicant to the neighbors. I am grateful to be a part of this strong and intelligent group of neighbors who have done their homework, and that is why they're pretty passionate tonight and always, since we have been talking about this for the last few years. So I'm going to sit here and orient you on the facts, understanding that the site is not currently zoned for this residential site-specific plan. Fact, the proposed height is nearly double what's allowed currently on El Segundo Residential Code. Fact, the density is nearly 4 times what is permitted. Fact, the parking is 263 plus spaces short of what is required in an area already struggling with parking shortages. Fact, traffic will incur 1,500 additional trips per day estimated, worsening an already failing traffic corridor. Fact, city resources including schools will be impacted. The developer claims 18 to 23 children will live in the complex, yet our own school district estimates over 80 students, so that is a drastic undercount. This does not include impacts to city, police, firefighters, water, power, etc., as renters will rotate in and out along the life cycle of 2 years, as noted by Greystar, the applicant themselves, and that I would say goes all of these listed on the screen right now. Fact, initial studies, as mentioned, DPC exposed that current site is contaminated with hazardous substances, specifically chlorinated solvents, as a result of its previous industrial manufacturing operations, including releases of volatile organic compounds, more specifically PCE and TCE in soil vapor that could affect surrounding areas outside of the site, and the children, 20 or so of which live in our specific Ellen Point community and way beyond for many of the neighborhood homes. If this were about thoughtful, responsible growth, and I think this should be noted even in the context of an EIR scoping meeting, we wouldn't be here tonight. Instead, we are witnessing an attempt to rewrite our city's rules for the sake of corporate greed. Even Greystar admitted Griffin Capital CEO Kevin Shields might not have made this purchase, a personal purchase they noted intended as a hand-me-down to their children, knowing now that facts before us that this project is too large, too dense, and too disruptive for the 1 to 2 story homes localized around the site. This brings me to another important piece of homework that has anchored us in our stand as a neighborhood together on getting this right. Our intended El Segundo legacy, and that legacy is what we believe is at stake, not just for the 500 milled, but El Segundo as a whole. The 2022 El Segundo Housing Element Survey showed that residents' #1 priority was, quote, maintaining the existing character of residential and commercial districts of the city. This development does not honor that #1 priority made clear by residents. Instead, it sets a dangerous precedent, a blueprint for future developers to force high-rises into our tight-knit community, turning El Segundo into yet another overdeveloped, congested South Bay city. And if I leave you with one thing, it's the assurance that this isn't just about Kansas and Holly. Like I mentioned, it's about all of El Segundo, because if this project sets a precedence, every neighborhood of El Segundo is at risk. If we allow, and I hope you take this into consideration as you're looking at the impact here, if we allow the developers and this applicant developer to dictate our future, we will lose the very essence of our town, our neighborhoods, our small town feel, our sense of community. It all hangs in the balance, in our opinion. Our community, our neighbors, those who have shown up, and for the most part, we do show up passionate, but with kindness and a willingness to collaborate, not for unattainable standards. We deserve better. We deserve smart development, responsible growth, and preservation of a legacy-driven town that we want our kids to grow up in, to know, and to love. So thank you for your time on hearing us, independent of this application, because we really do believe that we can get this right. Thank you.
Some people.
I just wanted to touch on one thing. Early on, you mentioned some of the related projects that are, so each of the issue areas will have a cumulative impact analysis. So we will look at the project together with other development projects that are being proposed, and we get a list from the city, and they'll say, okay, here's 10 projects or whatever it is that are in the surrounding area. We look at the combined effects of the project with those. So I would just make sure when you write your comments, if you know of certain projects that are close by, please note them, because I want to make sure they're in the list that we get from the city.
We can do that, and we prepared an organized meeting last year where there's a whole deck that went into detail on some of the things that I said, including that.
Okay, perfect.
So I will submit that as well as a written comment.
Great, thank you.
Hello. The place is empty, obviously, and I do see a lot of homeless people going in there, and we had the park across the street. I walk my dog in that area. I don't see any police patrolling the area, and I'm also wondering about the air quality and the hazardous material. Is it safe now? I mean, it's an open area. I mean, we're all walking the neighborhood and living that area. I mean, I know you haven't done your studies yet. I understand that, but how is it now? Is it okay? Is it a safe place to walk around with my dog? Does anybody know?
The reality of it based on what they have
No.
in the
Yeah,
report.
I'm going to
it's
your
not.
question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I mean, I think a
It's
lot of it
not,
has
so
to
are we
do-
living in a hazardous area? Should I not be walking my dog in that area?
I mean, we can't address that, but I know that a lot of times what happens is when that soil is disturbed during grading, that's really when it becomes an issue because particles will go into the air and then there's airborne issues. But I mean, if it's just there sitting there, I mean, I have not been or the city has not been made aware of by DTSC that as it stands right now that there's any impacts or anything
Well,
the community needs
it's
to be
something
worried
I
about.
think maybe that we should know as residents who live right there. Is it, are we okay to walk in that area? I mean, is it okay? Could we get some kind of report or something? Because it's gonna take a while for all this to happen, obviously. So where are we today? Should I walk somewhere else? What's up? I would definitely like to know that. I mean, for my safe, and there's a lot of children
reach out
who
to DTSC
are playing right across the street. There's a park.
Okay,
You
well-
aware of the park across the street?
Yeah, oh, definitely, yeah.
There's
Yeah, I mean, we can
infants.
reach out to DTSC
Please,
as well.
I
I mean,
would
we,
really appreciate that. Thank you.
And just to see if there is,
And thank you for
Let
your
them know.
speech. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sharmo SSC. I live at 311 Kansas Street. And I kind of have a follow-up question, kind of related to Chelsea's points. But when you're doing your EIRs related to traffic and considering other projects, what are you comparing them to? Because when Gray Star last year did their presentation about comparing, the school districts in relation to, comparing them to our school districts, the school districts they were comparing the impact that it would have on our community were huge school districts. They were Malibu, they were Culver City, that were Inglewood, even Orange County ones, but they were not proportional to our community. So that's my first question is what are you comparing them to? Are you comparing them to like communities, or you're comparing them to like the city of Los Angeles? Like LAUSD is not comparable to El Segundo School District.
So as part of the public services analysis for impacts to schools, we will find out for this project what site, whatever the elementary school, the middle school, and the high schools, where they're mapped to go to. We will be sending letters out to the school district that, in specific to this project, we will say, in the school, each school district has generation factors. So they'll have a factor for, if it's a multifamily unit, they'll say, hey, for every multifamily unit, we've got a factor of X for elementary, for middle school and high school. So based on the school districts that, the actual impacted schools, we will calculate the number of elementary, middle school, and high school students. So we'll tell you what that number is. We will then contact the school district. We will get the capacity information of their school, and then we will say, okay, this school, the elementary, where these kids would be going, we'll look and see whether or not that school, whatever school, and I don't know what the school is, but whether or not that school has capacity to accommodate the projected number of students. And we'll do that at each level for elementary, middle, and high school. But we'll be reaching out specifically to the schools and get the very specific information on the schools that will serve the site.
Thank you. And then my second question is for noise mitigation. Who's responsible for that? Because when there was construction, there was a lot of dust. So I called AQMD and they sent someone out. But I said it's also very loud, and they said there's nobody that we could call to mitigate the noise. So is that the construction company, like manager, or who is responsible for enforcing noise restrictions?
Right. When it comes to construction, that's always kind of a dicey thing because, I mean, it's almost inherent with construction. Any construction is going to make noise. Now, in terms of how much noise is being produced and for the duration and length, we would look at that issue in terms of, okay, is it just this constant pounding that's occurring for hours and hours on end? Or is it something that you may have some pounding and some beeping, and that lasts for a couple minutes, and then you have 10, 15 minute? So it's really dicey. So I mean, if and when it comes to that point, you know, we could work with you and with the with our building and safety inspectors as well. They keep a pretty tight eye, especially on these larger projects, because of this type of impacts as well. I'm not going to get into, you know, what I anticipate if this ever gets approved, because I've been in other cities where what I've done is, with these large projects, I work with the local HOA, and I try to have like monthly meetings with the HOA and the developer to kind of come up with, hey, you know, these are the issues that came up, what can be done? So that way we're all in the same room together and working collaboratively to address your concerns as they come up. You know, that usually helps, but I'm going to stop short of saying that we'll do that for this one, because we don't know. We're not at a point where again, nothing has been approved. We're at the very early stages. But if it were to do that, we would look at something like that as well.
And I would appreciate that, because we live literally across the street from the
Understood.
site. And, you know, I can only speak to the demolition. I can't speak to, I mean, whether this project is approved or something else is approved, like, something's going to be built there, right? So just taking into account the community and having transparent communication, because that, I don't feel like that happened when the destruction happened. So
Yeah, and when it comes to construction, I mean, I dealt with this where I live. You know, my neighbor, you know, built, and you hear a lot of the construction activity and noise happens when that framing is going up, or the land is being graded, and then all of a sudden, like, you hear nothing. Well, you know, they're probably installing the electrical wiring, the plumbing, so you're not hearing. You know, but again, these are like more like temporary type of situations. So, but if it does become an issue, I mean, obviously we'll have our inspectors or staff go out there and take a look at it, and listen and say, you know, okay, is it something that is, you know, violating our noise ordinance, and we could take appropriate action. For when it comes to noise, yes, I mean, we could try to assist you with that. I mean, again, we'd have to do the assessment. It may be like, okay, you know what, sorry, this is just a temporary thing that's occurring. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
outside of it, who's enforcing it? You know, I know we have AQMD for, you know, air quality issues and things, but for noise, I'm just curious who's.
Right. Yeah, for noise, yeah, it would be more of us.
Hi, I'm Jason Tabak. I live at 424 Washington Street. I have a two-part question. So I'm sorry, sir, I forgot your name.
David.
So at the beginning of your presentation, you talked about a letter that sounded like, I don't know if it went to the city or the developer. Can you go back and clarify that?
So the developer, the applicant, submits plans to the city. My responsibility is to review those plans to make sure they meet the minimum standards needed to process through the public hearing process. When they submit, we typically return that around in 30 days, and we can deem the application incomplete and ask them for more information. Or once they've given us everything, we deem it complete. And then we once we're complete with this environmental process, then we schedule for public hearing. They've submitted, we will be providing them a comment letter asking for more information, to either correct information they've given us or to ask for additional information.
That comment letter made public, can we have a copy of it and see the information that you deem is not enough or is too much? I mean, can we just see that comment letter? Is that?
Yeah, we'll have them uploaded to the website.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I'm sorry, sir, I have a question for you. I'm sorry, you're Mike. Can you talk a little bit about the experts on your team that are going who they are, who your staff is, how long they've been doing it? I mean, you touched on it a little bit, but I just wanted to get a little bit more clarification.
Yeah, so ESA's firm, we will be doing the majority of the analysis. So for example, air quality, and how long, I've been doing this for 25 years personally. We got staff of all, you know, shapes and sizes, some younger, some older. But so for air quality, GHG, we have a team at ESA that's what they do. They analyze the air quality, In the GHG, they also do the energy. We have acoustical engineers that do the noise. So that's kind of they more like specialized in those issue areas. I consider myself an environmental planner. So folks like me at ESA, we can handle a range of different issue areas, not so much, I don't do a lot of the technical. When I say technical, I'm thinking the stuff that's quantitative, the air quality, the GHG emissions, the noise, the traffic. I mean, those are very sophisticated models that someone usually will do. That's kind of their specialty area. For issues like aesthetics, you know, the hazards, the hydrology, us people, the folks like me at ESA, the environmental planners, we gather that information. So we will get any sort of phase 1, phase 2, DTSC reports. We pull them all together, and we can look at different, the environmental planners can look at different issue areas. For certain topics like the geology and the hazards, those we will be seeking the reports, technical reports from others. So there's certain firms out there that prepare what will be a phase 1 environmental site assessment. That's one of the initial hazardous materials assessment. So it's a specialist who does that. There's also subsequent hazardous materials reports that will be prepared by specialists in their areas. That ESA, we don't prepare them, but there will be specific consultants that will prepare those reports. The geology reports, those are certified reports by a geologist. So we've got a geologist that prepares those. The traffic, again, not something that ESA prepares. There will be a traffic consulting firm that's what they do. We'll get that report. We will incorporate the results of that report into the EIR. So if you think of the EIR kind of like a pizza or a pie, we're getting all these different pieces. ESA is assembling, pulling in all these technical issue areas from various specialists. We compile them all into the EIR document. So it's a host of different folks depending upon the respective issue areas. Does that help?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you guys, first of all, for working on behalf of our community and all that you do. I know it's a tough job. First of all, I want to second and put extra voices on what Chelsea said. I think everyone here, you know, reverberates with that one. I want to make sure that's a high volume thing. A couple of things I just want to add that are specifics that you might want to look at, some local knowledge like you talked about. There's in the housing element, they talk about you can build a certain height, and then there's some community enhancement, Wi-Fi and murals and stuff that would allow them to go to certain other heights. I just want to go on record, and I think the rest of us here would agree that those things that they would propose to give the community are pretty much a zero for us. So those are not going to offset anything, the additional height. Free Wi-Fi, murals, I forget what the other things are. I think we all agree none of that helps us. So if you could put that down, is whatever they want from the height, that's giving us zero back. For whatever that's worth. Another thing to know is behind the building is Jim and Jack's. They do car repair and stuff, and they park a lot of cars between, it's not even an official road as far as I know, and they're not, I don't know that they necessarily own it, maybe they do, I'm not sure. But traffic can't be accounted to drive down there, and I know Griffin is proposing to wall it off, and that then takes a lot of cars and pushes those into the neighborhood as well as blocking traffic and things like that. So something to know there when you're doing your traffic studies and parking studies, how that is gonna sort of spread into the neighborhood. And then additionally, our area is, you probably already know this being in El Segundo, is full of airport parkers and things like that. And additionally, we have different complexes like Rancho Pay and stuff park over in front. I live across the street from the park, in front of the park, and already the parking, they're already in a parking permit situation. And so the population that is being proposed community members won't even be able to drive to and park in front of this park anymore if this were allowed, because that parking deficit that Chelsea spoke to, there would be just a very large parking impact from that sort of thing. So just some things to note there. And then the last thing I'll say, I don't know that this goes in your world, but just to go on record is we've worked with Griffin and Greystar quite a bit, and they've talked a lot about the different things that they want to do for residential, and we're like, well, what else can you do that is profitable? And they've told us that like what they're proposing today is sort of like the minimum that they could make any money on residential wise. And I said, well, what else can you do to make money? And they said they could make a warehouse. And we were like, okay, well we're going to explore that and be interested in that and see what that's like. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is we as a community are trying to work with them and find something that's functional for both of us. And that what this is being proposed right now is something that we have told them all along, that this is not something we want. This is not something we think works in our community. We have what you have told us we think is something profitable for you, that we think works for both parties. So I just want to go on record that we as a community are trying to work with them and not just raise pitchforks and say, you know, we don't want anything there.
And I'll add to that to say that we met with Jim to see, well, how low can you go on the amount of apartments? Because I know at the beginning, David, you said that there are elements, that there are levers that you can pull and change, and one of that was the density aspect of it. And I know that they gave us, what was it, 283, huh? 283 was the number they...
264.
260. And sold. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry. So we have explored like how we have had those conversations from that Matt mentioned, but also the lower density homes, and maybe it could be 5 stories instead of 7. We've talked through those, but when push came to shove, the conversation really came to a stalling point because it still was way too dense and way beyond the existing housing standards for residential in El Segundo, and just wasn't making sense, which is why I'm sure the proposal that you have before you is in its largest form. So wanted to also put it on record that we've had those conversations and tried to have transparent conversations to get to an agreement point. And it really hasn't been that unless we explore other options outside of residential, and even that, you know, it's all a point of conversation. So.
Anybody else?
Who wants to speak?
We good, everybody?
Anyone?
Everybody has a chance?
Hi, here he is, the one and only.
Hey, everyone. So I just want, well, role, but the 323 here is being studied for technical reasons. We have worked together with the 264 unit plan as we met in December. Location. We have a website. I have materials to just. So 264 can go. That. And this process is very technical. It follows the law and sets maximum density. So if we study 264 and then city council said we need to add 10 houses, the EIR would no longer be valid. It had to be redone. So we're studying 320. Here wants. So this is just a technical process. We can all work together to lower the count. So we have a website that we've been working on over the past 2 months. I have flyers I can hand out after this meeting. There's an area where you provide feedback to us. I know we can discuss, but it's an area where you can share with us, Q&A, and I'll be out afterward if you want to talk to me personally.
So does that change, if he changes his density, that changes traffic, does that change your?
So the EIR is going to analyze the project as it's being submitted, as it's being proposed. So that's what we're going to analyze as part of the main project analysis. So we also, and I mentioned, we will have a chapter on alternatives. So there is an opportunity for the EIR to evaluate alternatives to the proposed project. So that could be a warehouse, it could be a reduced density alternative. It could be anything. I mean, you know, there's opportunities for the EIR to explore other types of projects that you all are mentioning. So I would encourage you to put that in your comments. Hey, we want to see an alternative. That's this, that, or the other.
So the EIR could actually, in the report, go, your 300 and whatever is, I'm not going to use, I'm going to be completely street on this, is bullshit. You can't do that. It's what would be acceptable in the traffic situation, as an example.
So the EIR is going to evaluate whatever the impacts are based on the applicable CEQA thresholds. So I can't.
It's not going to say, like, to your point, it's not going to say, oh, but if you reduce it down to 120, then it's going to be okay. That's not the point of the EIR. It's the EIR is to evaluate the impacts at 323. And presumably, to your point, if they say, you know what, it's going to impact all these roadways. Well, let's take a step back. What can be done to mitigate those impacts? So, or change the design of...
More streetlights in won't necessarily mitigate the amount of traffic on the streets, but the size of the project could change the amount of cars on the streets.
Right, so
and
if we're...
he's saying that they would give recommendations, if you did this, you would get this.
Not necessarily recommendations. We're going to provide if there is whatever issue is, if there's a significant environmental impact, our job is to identify any available feasible mitigation measures. So whatever issue area we are looking at, we will say, hey, you've got a potentially significant impact, okay? Let's analyze and let's come up with any mitigation measures to try to reduce that impact to whatever our threshold level is. Okay, so we're going to do that for the project on every issue.
So you can tell them what your threshold level is.
Oh, the thresholds will be laid out for every issue area. We're going to have a section, and I'll give you just an easy one is one where we have quantitative thresholds, air quality, for example, that has for construction impacts. The Air Quality Management District has certain limits that projects can emit. I think it's, and without getting into too much details, say you can emit 55 pounds per day of a certain pollutant. If we run our models and we say, okay, you guys are the project's gonna generate 70 pounds per day, we're gonna come up with a mitigation to try to get it below that 55. Now, if we're at 50, we are below our threshold. We don't need any mitigation measure. It's a less than significant impact.
So you give them suggestions on how to mitigate the situation?
Well, it's the project. It's the project from an environmental standpoint. And then, and I was just gonna, so going back to the alternatives, we're gonna, really a focus of alternatives under CEQA is to try to find alternatives to the project that reduce the project's significant impacts. So that's really the main purpose of your alternatives. It's like, hey, what else can what alternatives might be out there that can potentially reduce our impact? So a good starting point for us when we're trying to find what alternatives to analyze, there's not a right or wrong answer to, it just needs to be, CEQA calls it a reasonable range of alternatives. So usually there's like 3 or 4 alternatives we'll look at. We will, first of all, hone in on those issues that we identify as significant and unavoidable. So that's going to say, gosh, we've got these significant and unavoidable air quality or traffic impacts. What can we do to try to reduce those impacts to below the threshold level? So oftentimes for residential projects, we have a reduced density. You'll bump it down to try to see where you're at, and maybe you can get below and eliminate some of those significant and unavoidable impacts.
So who sets the threshold?
Threshold for what?
For what you're looking at as far as going above the threshold.
The thresholds are established under CEQA, or for example, the air quality thresholds that I just mentioned, those are set by the South Coast Air Quality Management District.
And traffic?
Traffic, the city has their own thresholds on traffic. So each city will have their own thresholds. We look at vehicle miles traveled. So the city will have their own traffic threshold, so we'll base them on the city's traffic thresholds.
So over to you. Does the traffic threshold change when all those specific commons are built? PCH is gonna be impacted.
So, yes, so it is, right, so it does take into account the cumulative, and I will say that with CEQA law, and when we look at traffic, for CEQA purposes, we're looking at vehicle miles traveled. That's something that the state has changed since, for about 5 or 6 years now. Whereas before, through the environmental process, we used to look at levels of service at intersections. We would look at volume and also carrying capacity of streets. We know CEQA for environmental purposes no longer requires that. As an aside study, we are having the applicant, or we're having, we told the applicant we need to do that because our general plan has certain intersections where they need to maintain a certain level of service. So there'll be another traffic analysis that hones in on particular and certain intersections to see what the impacts are when generating a project of 323 units upon those intersections, and whether the levels of service for those intersections are reduced down to a grade level that goes from, let's say, for example, it's currently operating at a level of B, and because now you have these additional residents, it'll go down to C. And when you take into account the cumulative projects, it may go down to something smaller or lower than that. Well, again, it comes back to the point of, can there be mitigation measures to improve that level of service back and maintain that existing level of service? It could be synchronization. It could be maybe if it's an intersection that needs a traffic signal, it would be a matter of installing a traffic signal. So there's various methods that can help mitigate that. But I do want to at least set the expectation that when it comes to the environmental, they're looking at what's called VMT. They're not looking at impacts at particular intersections. Although that study will be done, it's just not part of the environmental CEQA process.
So Manhattan Beach is building a giant units as well. Is not part of the impact of the traffic on our PCH and such. The talking stick. Talking stick doesn't work. That's going to affect part of anything into our testing, right? So you got the Pacific Commons that are already passed. You're going to have already that impact. Then you have the ones in Manhattan Beach, down where the veranda was, down there. That's going to impact because it comes off. And now you want a 300 unit on top of that. None of that's going to be, the Manhattan Beach won't be part of this impact, right?
Like, is that going to be part of the VMT for
Surrounding cities with the same.
cumulative? Okay. Does it take into account the cumulative impacts of all other projects? No. Okay, but the separate study that we're having them do will. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So for purposes of the environmental, no, it does not, because it's based on VMT, and Mike could probably give you a better synopsis of what VMT is. But for our purposes, this separate traffic study would look at the impacts to intersections, to certain key intersections. And it would take into account the cumulative nature. Yeah. No, it would be a separate document because it's technically, levels of service is not something that is considered by CEQA. The state changed that. At that, I don't know, we'll have to see when that comes up. It'll definitely be before we take it to commission. Definitely, yeah. And we'll definitely put that on.
Just a couple things. It's a hazardous area. And is it zoned for this?
Not currently. One of the application requests is to change the zoning.
So how would it change? Why would it change? I mean, how can it change?
Well, the city can designate zoning for any property within the city boundaries, so the applicant is requesting that the council change the zoning, and that is within the council's, rights to change that. They could also say, no, thank you, we're not going to change it as well too, in which case the project would not move forward. That's ultimately the council's decision.
Would all the studies affect that? I mean, all of you guys' studies, would that impact on that?
All of that along with the staff analysis of the project and all of your comments during public hearings, and all that plays into the council's decision.
So the next question, you had mentioned alternatives. So could one of your recommended alternatives be that, hey, this 300-plus unit study or apartment complex is not feasible? However, we do recommend or suggest the development of individual, a 500 or 50-unit apartment complex,
Well, again,
similar to Grand Tropez, which is about the same size as far as property-wise.
Yeah, again, the alternatives look at the environmental impacts. They do not make recommendations. Ultimately, the staff recommendation will look at the environmental impact report and all the analysis that goes on with findings in comparison to what the city's general plan states and what they want to do. All that focuses in the staff's recommendation. And then the recommendation is to approve, deny, approve with conditions. So one of those three things will go to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission will take that into consideration, again, with all of your comments, and make their final recommendation to either approve or
And
deny.
again, the Planning Commission will have like we did before, right? We'll have an open forum with the Planning Commission on
Right, at that point, you'll actually have
the
at least
hearings
three
again and
three
just
planning
listening to us.
commissioners here at the dais that will be listening to you, along with all the information that's been provided to the public, to you all. Same thing is going to be given to them.
Will the city do a survey or something that says the impact of this massive apartment complex on a single-family residential neighborhood? Will the city take a look at what they will see, how that will impact a single-family residence? To have a 7-story building next door to your house, is the city actually going to take a look at it and make an evaluation? I mean, it's impacting a lot of single-family homes here. And I've been to a lot of these meetings thanks to our leaders are keeping us informed. Has the city, perhaps they can't tell us right now, but will the city do some sort of research to come into the community and really see what our neighborhood is all about before they approve a 323-unit apartment complex?
The short answer is yes.
Sorry, Edward, I was looking right
No,
at you, but I should have been looking at you.
Fine. I mean, we're
So-
Batman and Robin here. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Batman, by the way, in that case. Yeah, that's actually what staff's ultimate recommendation does do. It looks at how the project does or does not fit into the community and whether or not it should or should not be approved.
Will they come door to door?
No, we don't go door to door. Yeah, what we would do, I mean, I've been out to the site before, if that's what you're asking, and I will go out again before we do the final formation there. Ed's been out to the site, so it's not like we're flying blindly here and just looking at paper. We do our full investigation into that, and yeah, absolutely. Ultimately, before the public hearing, there's another notice goes out, and you get a chance to provide written comments. And if they're provided early enough, those can be considered as part of the staff recommendation as well too. And we're here listening as well too as and all the comments that come in, we hear it all. We don't do a specific resident survey. It's more of eliciting your comments during the approval process.
Your staff, and you guys make a recommendation to the planning commission, and and the council, or you just do it for the commission?
And then the commission makes the recommendation, their recommendation to the council. So when it goes from, when staff makes recommendation to the hearing, the planning commission, you have at least 3 commissioners up here, 'cause it takes at least 3 for them to conduct a meeting. They will take in all the information. And then ultimately, they will vote and make a recommendation for the city council to either approve or deny the project. Once it goes to council, council takes that final action on whether or not they want to see the project.
Can you give us a little bit of a criteria of how you make your determination of a yay or a nay? Like, what are some of the things that you guys will weigh to make your recommendation to the council and, you know, to planning commission and city council?
There's specific findings in the city's codes that we have to evaluate the project against. And those findings look at consistency with general plan, they look at impacts to the area, compatibility with neighborhoods. You know, I don't have the findings in front of me right now, but for every one of the applications, we have to go through those findings, and ultimately the recommendations based off those findings, whether or not they can be made. It takes all the findings to approve and denial of any one finding to deny.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Findings are a legal term, basically. They're a legal way of looking at a project and doing the evaluation for, to put it in layman's terms. So we have a set list of criteria in the zoning code that specifies what we have to look at.
Just to follow up on that, this is a site-specific plan. I know that when you look at that criteria, what is it measured against, knowing that there is a residential housing element for El Segundo and some requirements, but this being a site-specific plan, how does that change those specifics for you?
The housing element's part of the general plan, and so it is evaluated against the general plans.
Even though it's a site-specific plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, even though it's a specific plan, it's still evaluated, because specific plans need to be consistent with the general plan.
Got it, okay. Thank you very much.
Anybody else? Once, go twice? All right, well, again, our information for submitting the comment cards are up there. They are, again, in the back of the room. You can feel free to drop them off tonight or drop them off at the planning counter. Feel free to email Ed or go ahead and mail him a fun letter. I'm here for a few more minutes if you have questions of me, and for specific comments related to the EIR, we're going to have you email Ed, so it's part of the public record. If you would like my email address, I would gladly give it to you, and I can answer questions beyond today if they come up for you. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you again. Chelsea, you eloquently put those comments together. It was great. If you have it, I saw you kind of reading. If you want to submit the written portion or email it to me, that's fine. And that way we have a better. I mean, we've all been taking notes. This has been I'm sorry. You can email it to me. Yes. This has been recorded, and so that recording will also be. There'll also be a link to this on the website as well. Just go through that QR code. Give us a day or two for our lovely folks at El Segundo Media to put that together and put it on our YouTube channel. But like I said, there'll be a link to that on our website. Okay. Either way, yeah. Or we've also. Yes, and because this is recorded, it's part of we've been running. So again, thank you so much.